Hello, and welcome to the Glass House Festival, Poetry from Around the World. We're bringing you over 100 artists who've come together in support of creative people impacted by COVID. The Glass House Festival is wholly promoted by the Art Mantram Trust, a not-for-profit organization that's been working since 1999, based out of Bangalore, promoting the arts, artists, and art awareness. Today's panel is Black AF, A Merry Poetic Futures, and brings together Taylor Johnson, Rickey Laurentis, and Simone White with our moderator, Dante Micheaux. Dante Micheaux is the author of Amorous Shepherd and Circus, which won the 2019 Four Quartets Prize from the Poetry Society of America and the T.S. Eliot Foundation. He's been shortlisted for the Benjamin Zephaniah Poetry Prize and the Britport Prize. Micheaux's other honors include the Oscar Wilde Award and fellowships from the Cave Canem Foundation and the New York Times Foundation. So we're really looking forward to this panel. Thank you for joining us. Dante, over to you.
Thank you very much, Yumna. So in listening to images, Professor Tina Camp discusses the tense of possibility that grammarians refer to as the future real conditional, or that which will have had to happen. It is a performance of a future that hasn't happened yet, but must. This panel gathers three distinct voices whose literary trajectories represent among the most searingly intelligent examinations of Black life in 21st century American poetry, while simultaneously creating a lyrical future in the here and now. I will introduce each panelist in the order that they will speak with lines from their own poems. Now, amongst the loam I sleep and dream not of my life among you, but of what fresh terror the earth will bring me next. Taylor Johnson. Why ask me who I am? Who really knows the place of my future? I'm his or I'm not. I'm black or black was made me. Rickey Laurentis. You are in service to explanation. One possible metaphor for microaggression is aphorism. You cannot come back from explanation to explain the poetry of poetry. Please welcome first Taylor Johnson.
Thank you, Dante. Thanks for having me. Since I quit that internet service, I'm thinking more about the transitive properties in books, the words, the palimpsest of images accruing in my brain, but more immediately, the book in my hand, the cover worn at one end from sweat and gripping it when it comes close, close as in when I stood up, but one deep exhale when I came to the lines of all fearless happiness from which reaches my life I sing and find it underlined by a beloved stranger. It's like turning the record over, knowing you're hearing what I'm hearing, easing up on the edge of the chair. It's like we're holding hands now at the edge of a white silence from which we are to make a music of our being here, of being moved, wherein our music complements and holds close each other's sound in the wet room of the tree I met you in. Nothing is said about the water or the fearless trees angled toward and against the light that did fall on me, made much of me, light that sings through me, so I'm singing. Nocturne, what was rampant in me was not wisteria, perhaps decay or loss of reflection. No one like me gets old, or so I thought, even as I watched the days fade into each other. Was I no one? Which phrase means a grown-up girl, mica gilded, pure myth, gone. Thoreau might say I was trying to find the door to nothingness, that the wild was already in me. However, I walked out my bed to find my skin, only to return moon-drunk, bramble-laden, stripped to sinew, a broken syntax. No denying how I got here, I lay down among the tall grass and came up a specter. I came up everywhere. Ecclesiastes, how to testify in the marketplace, for my voice was everything, was meaningless, knee deep in the mud with my tongue out. Monsoon, mason jar, morning glory, must I carry even the idiolect of gravel, glossolalia in stupor of all things moving and unmoving? I fall in and fall back out. Oh, exaltation. The Virginia pine grows straight up to deeper blue, and most taproots I'll never see. I was waiting for you to turn around, pretending none of this baffles me, not taking it personally. Black existential exegesis. This engine and cog business is wigged out. I want nothing we're owed from the ship gig, thence the land whereon modern sound weaned off our cowrie and cached aged conjure, land whereon our woe is chic and wanted. Shout out to every nigga cajoled into winging it in a crowd, crowing about being the hewer and the hewer's subject. Oh, my aching chore choir due upon our ochre echo throughout this land, this cadence gag, our ego greeted upon and caged. Grace is our odd crowd which encores green and geodes. Shout out to every nigga dodging age by ignoring human genre fiction gore, ergo we're nowhere, we're nigging on being owned and renewed, weighing nothing like race. Shout out to every nigga eroding off the edge of something else, gossiping in the air. I'm from DC, so the next title of this poem is Go-Go Ode. Go-Go is a kind of Black indigenous music form. It just started raining where I'm at right now, so maybe you can hear that. I'm in New Orleans where I live. Go-Go Ode. Oh, capacious room, give me your tongues. I'm done with being self-possessed. Take hold, turn the river in me. I'm freed up to be anybody else. My molecules twinned with the sound, oh, erotic hours. Pass me not, keep me in the pocket, oh, percussive descent. Devotion is anything you say go awry. In this early hour, keep me recursive. The impulses to lose my feet. I'm yet overcome whose seismic drop, whose sovereign fade. Oh, black chaos, I'm in study at your center. Turn me out. West 177th and Broadway. All night you eyed the man I wanted to be. My jaw flexed tight. Anger slipped into desire. Easily he would rise. Easily you would disperse pleasure made into light. What you want under him, I put on to amuse. I, your worked supplicant. Yes, love is looking away. My desire greened in your dismissal was technicolor and twilight made and never turning off. The city air hung humid above our charade. What need I could fill to transubstantiate, to unravel. I'll just read like three more. The black proletarianization of the bourgeois form isn't Kanye West gospel samples. O death, your singular eye. My mother speaks the king's English, makes quiche, makes clove pomanders in winter, pawned her flute, cleaned my elementary school classroom. What is hers? Brilliant song, my mother sotto voce in her chair asking for touch. It is drowning, she means, not freedom. I swam fine, don't you get it? Oh death, my mother is elegant, alive, entering the blue hole of evening alone. You could reach into the frame, pull her out. Oh death, I've been crueler, I've watched. I forget about money, watching the clouds over 8th and Ingraham, the clouds, a rhubarb-colored ship in the sky. To my right, it all grays out. The bats emerging now from the chimneys, the bats listening for the cicadas echo. Echo is a way to create space, is a metaphor for time. Time for the cop to move along, I think watching the cop watch me from my porch. Fuck 12. The robin on the wire vine, the wire eye competing with the bats for cicadas, the robin competing reds with the sky a money for the cicadas, a way to make space, time. The cicadas sounding out the future through repetition. A friend says to spend nothing is to keep flexibility in your hands, to keep your youth. Money, the sound of decay. Money, the repetition of waste. A kind of wildness descends, and across the expanse, the attendant wind drones its one fecund song. When I am so tender in the thick of rot, I let all the morning wet spread a plague across this threadbare vessel that holds in what hums, what rushes beneath. Give as the ground gives. Make of me your groveling tongue, your dust, your possessed, possessing. Never let up. Thank you. It's a real pleasure to read with both of y'all. Thank you so much, Dante.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to have Rickey.
That was great. I loved it. Every moment. It was lovely. I really mean that. I don't lie about those things. I'm just gonna read poems. Okay, let's do it. They're new poems. So we're gonna be in conversation a lot, I think. I feel that. Because of a good curator. We love to see it. And this is called Because We Love Each Other. The weather is rude today, too full of good color and cheer. It makes me want to be out of here. Out of the interior time, pandemics times trauma has made me. I would sing as the canary passes gently through the break of my vision. I would listen as the cat's ear stings patiently at its lord. I would gorge deeply my own fruit's womb. I would entomb blind joy in a spell. Benedictus fructus ventis tui Jesu. Jesu is us, and he isn't, any more than Byzantine raised halos and bronze diseases us, and they are. The most I enjoy these hiccups come also witty with the breath, with the breast, and the idea of disease, ease, and that we might just be each metal too close together that will infect each other. Brother, brother, sister, 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 brother, comma, comma, trans, with revision then, reglistening, which is love because. This next one is called Him. I'm from New Orleans. There's a valley a man's worked back makes, and there's a violence too. There's a river a man's kept attention makes, and there's a violence too. There's a wake a man's coming hands make, and there's a violence too. There's a falcon a man's spiked voice makes, and there's a violence too. There's a way a man will turn to you, beg, I'm hurt, and there's his violence too. Turn to you of sudden color, random, beg, I, alone, blameless, sly, am hurt, and that's a violence too. There's a moment, I'll say, gaslit, and all his violence chooses not to hear it, so that choice, random, blameless, sly, becomes a violence too. Men choose the violences they deliver like mirrors do their debt, like slivers of heat, pride, prejudice come up their throat, bite or smile to take all the while and quick the nearest man's side or his business or his stranger acumen or any benefit of doubt or his acumen or his wit, and of course he won't admit it, but his violence too. All men have it, take it even how I do. Do I have a violence too? Though lately, what I am trying to make sense in me, make Pharaoh and more feminist, just upset and not a man who never was and hardly was, and sees no more the violence of the purpose of that claim. A man turns to you and claims he alone is hurt, as if it isn't possible his tall hubris hurt him first. Why be a man when there are valleys you can be? Penetrate and you can walk them. Take in their honest expanse as a primer nature and see some shy ribbon of river move in patient wakes the very line a falcon takes, returning to the falconer. I think this means I can be something other than what I was raised, that I can let go him for him and all that's violence too. For it's easy enough to conquer a man. I look in his eyes and grow pathetic. This is called, the next one, I don't know what it's called. I'm calling it Venus in Draft for right now, but we'll see. Venus in Draft. Maybe use isn't right word enough, I think, or maybe dead isn't, or speak for, or consider George Floyd. Other than his name, his headstone, what else loan me any further detail? What else of him do I know? Like other than their meanings, their conveniences, what else could these any words say? It's like, to say the name, I cease knowing it, plumb forgot, as now my feet bracing the space between beach and birth forget themselves and are wet. Or not none of that. Or maybe it's distraction, or read or lie like Rickey Laurentis. Maybe it's his, really, or maybe it's her. Like Rickey Laurentis is a lie we all made true. We did. We played it. We made together a way into the presentation she is and resurrected them and are hurt. Don't dismiss it. This minimal confusion, that hurt, a slickness wept into the air as any less necessary or satisfying. How other than these social distances or sentences have I and I to creep? How other than some hurting would we accept any birth? I'm saying though, what other satisfactions could I try but lip to lip and tongue, respelling them out the distances like, let use of his dead body speak for itself, like that. Let distraction, let use, like that. Like that. Let use of her red body lie for itself, like that. Only, always, ever recombining, ever rearranging and cleanly with the waves around me. This is called For Now, we'll see, it's called Diptych Song of the New Holy Sea. Who is your assistant to the river, Oshun, and let me know him? But I bid him be my trouble. Mewing in the meantime who chose me, who crept his paw already rightfully coy, tomcat on his back, reached me to him. He did it, so I called him up, trouble, who relates to lesser music, to silence, who gladdens everyone with his flirty business, trick fun, and runs away with his mischief rarely done. Not in the way of the queen or Ashumari's snake, but who's scared? Beware his curioso and his cleverness do meet his caution and his care, and beware it is all for you. You who runs her honey down my waist, his basic seduction down my legs, the yolk of an egg, so I am a shooting again. So trouble has come a long way again to find me and is here again with me. No wonder he works for the clash a grocery bag makes with air, which is only thunder, gang, gang, and my red Jewish lightning cracking cymbal over his head. Wonder he would steal away then, go to low ground, just as down bad as my crack in the bag, only to reprimand him is, who has done some mischief, who has shredded the head of the negress pincushion white care once shared at me, not with, but who I still keep now, a better art artifact than prior, right before Miss Lucille's Mulberry Fields. I do yield sometimes, he's the only man makes me do it, to him, briefly at him as I enter the door from the world I've just left to this better one, peppered with his mute insistence, but I don't let him see this. He's asleep. I would bid him be, and him perching and just waking from the summit of the island in the middle of our community. The one I had the Virgin make. In exchange, I fold his pardon and I fold again. The island I turn water around, singing hates from my left hand. The island, just shy of that cruelty, some unity makes a curve, like a parenthesis, like my own assistance met lewdly in my hips, parentheses, rather, just shy of the archway thresh itself, but a ways past the door who leads to the living. The pink mahi, the black book and the glen, the wind fields, which is melancholy, irony, sympathy, attention, and still more wind, finally rectify in sex, and still more wind to its own medicine, which has become salt, altar, the Dead Sea, the serious complexity of rock, which has become earth, altar, who works us, who shows up again as ochre, indigo, oil, as aubergine, glitter, feather, in the library of Alexandria, 401 days past its rage sabbatical, so that dust, ash, smut, sluttiness, hottentot, thottiness, ink and fur, and what your first mind following you tell you to do, gut as anxiety then, which is her worser name, rather as unthesis and crisis and pleasure, and what all else sucks at the teeth, as if eyes where fire dared, so that lie is where we find our library of knowledge, that earlier church, precious worth and built on the back of the calf. I could have sworn I saw that trouble laugh at me, he who is my assistant, who can't be fooled, but as I order his rules so that he unspools my worry and hurries from the island to my feet some 7 whole years away, and without a word, he, never a word, he passes, but his head gently in the space meant for whereby my feet be, where I look at him now, bowing so that our smells talk together like giddy schoolboys in love, pleasure like the 2 tips of the horn of the elephant's tucks like musk, and I rest, forgetting the world. Pearl of a different society, or the jaguar swag attracts me to his belly that I see now only when he rolls over in his chest beneath me, as now at the archway thresh, where I see it is his black study and his patience and his groomliness that attracts me nearly like my red juvie once did, Sango would or does or could have done, yet not the same, for Sango and me are much too much the same for our tinny mischief to maintain for a world. And though some of the world has snagged interest of his whiskers, my Mr. Trouble, I know he won't cross that threshold, or hardly will, for he wants his head rubbed constantly. All men want their head rubbed constantly, for he wants his play, and only lets my most honesty do it. He misses me. He is my thinking I should get down and get my eager on, play and ride on in the middle of the air, and not forget the blessed crisis, sweet and evergreen trauma of the dryads lent me through the thorn and holly, oak, pine and avocado, the elephant ear and St. Augustine grass, and the hill whereupon the bluer virgin sat, and bordering shrub, only a tree cut down to its own shame, a shrub then, where I named the problem. Found Ogun, the day all clocks and all screens stopped, found his festus too, and hammer and St. Rock and bougainvillea and palm tree did he, Kang, one time got together and gas, my grandfather, Kang, choir, fire, theater, for to sit away my bees. Yet, all these trees where I was born, though a river raised me, I was born from the history of trees. It was a tree, burdened, slinking like the back of a cat, that misunderstood, that daily. I come from that. I should let my trouble climb a tree wearing his black collar and thought, and I can do, and I will do. I shouldn't reprove him. He approves me. He is mine assistant, who gives me life like a black woman, who sends out the white care, driven out of its gaze, out of its place, who has his own face laying beside me now, pause across his eyes, belly gone sky now, wise to be asleep, and yea, though I have acted cruelly against him once or twice, have misplaced our silly song, always he forgives me. Yay, trouble. This last one is, I don't know. I'm thinking back to Audre Lorde's iconic essay, Uses of the Erotic, this is just one moment from it, where she reminds us that our erotic knowledge empowers us, becomes a lens through which we scrutinize all aspects of our existence, forcing us to evaluate those aspects honestly in terms of their relative meaning within our lives. And this is a grave responsibility. That's just for you to have. This one poem maybe also has an epigraph. That's so new. I don't know. James Baldwin also said, I want to be honest and a good writer. So this is Uses of the Erotic. And thank you. I'm going to be quiet after this. I like the red that hides itself coy in a library quickie. Pages that mahogany hold, and I love the skin mahogany. I like the specifically wet pink of my lips before a kiss or after biting them, anytime I'm thinking of nearness in. I like the even ways such ignorals quit, like brown eyes turn to honey in excess sun. I like the way the dark entwists itself to overrulus and indigo, the crusher snake, and someone's possible being there in the room beside you, not to scare, but to care you, and I like the look of agony. Except the way East Asia's hair sheens to comic blue and cobalt inferno, I like that too. I like the hue of my hips. A hint is just most any saint with a hint of ghost, like how in the picture to the right I see the smoked homeward particulars of his face smiling to see me. I like to see me. I like to be too kinky, and thinking about the very colored smell of just cut grass and the better tale of it after it rains. I like to like the things and people and blush and have designs for and go, oh Lord, and appetites and be resigned to the crush of this power and to trust it feels good is information, a fat color, quarantine, the weather of a hungry sun. I like to say aubergine over eggplant and negro over negro. I like a dick that stands right up at attention and points its mission as being hard, varied to the one it sees a door. I mean, I really like it, 8 inches please, and the hum of that seeing drum of a door, which is the color of his head, both heads thinking, an easy brown, a snare, a truffle, and weird luck. I really like to fuck. I like the color swear words make fractals in my mind, and it's a shame cotton fields are so pretty, a very L green. I like the color wags and the Puerto Rican flag sit up in every window that of course ain't Puerto Rico, and the literal black when it's closed on my skin, which isn't the literal black, Fanta black, but something like mahogany again, lost of its darkness, which I love, and a creepy yellow melody replaces my face. I like that. I like to spell Hawaii like it's spelled, and I like a yellow dress less than the yellow of a dress, what makes men fall clean off their bites. I like a good fight, and I like a yellow fan less than any yes worded whispered by the goddess Gorge. I would like to be so honest and a good writer without this being man and the quieter arts and men and windmills blurring. So Petrarch is a word that feels gray to me, not gray. I like that. I hear that. Like I like my syntax. No Shun is a name that feels bronze to me, which is the better call of my skin, though I know she's gold. I like the way sounds do come themselves like crying do, that second ejaculate, that they become their colors, immaculate colors come their words. And I like the color flying away of almost any bird. I love this world. I love this world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rickey. And last but certainly not least, we have Dr. White. Please join us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to read with Taylor and Rickey and to be reminded all the time that poetry is great. We can hear each other thinking in poetry. It's so beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to read from this new manuscript, which will be a book shortly, called Or on Being the Other Woman. One of the poems that I'm going to read just now isn't in the book, but it's related. It's called A. A great deal of puzzling forgetting loomed, or was a pall of disorientation, occasionally pierced by incompletely appreciating mental acuity. It having been possible to remember facts and feelings in a previous period, previously, without hesitating so gravely, not being able to speak. I inhabited time densely, and so was not dead or deadened. More an aliveness or supposed anxiety that did not turn attention away, neither trembling nor luminous. It was dense or had mineral qualities, nothing of ethereal or heavens except its mean dust. Several combinations of not being able to articulate the names of objects first, panicking or shock, being puzzled coming later in relation to initial awareness of heretofore uncontemplated blank spots, both biological, that is, neurological, not knowing the names of people or places or things in front of my students when critically sleep-deprived in the first instance, and poetic, objecting to the ordinary or orthodox way access to words has been described, as a matter of grammar, Steinian, as a matter of disability, stuttering, having many words and unable to find them. Also, performance of ease with respect to writing metaphorically, invention or creativity organized in terms of access to this kind of speech. Morbid fear of flying occasionally flares up, attributable to early incomplete understanding of the phenomena of wind shear. As a child, gathering a plane could be hurled to the ground by the air. Deducing air travel cannot be completely safe. A plane or engineers not being able to respond mechanically to the force that carries the plane. The principal absurdity of being unable to overcome physics in this basic way. How fucked we are. Thus, I imagine air disaster, mass death, and my own death to be related to a kind of unresourcefulness or lack of creativity with respect to language, or language's pathetic nature in the face of dimensions. What to call flayed vestibularity, which sounds very dramatic. Chief Keef's Save Me, for example. If Chief Keef has Asperger's, I'll be a monkey's uncle. Two kinds of multidimensional imagining have been troubling during the time of this work. I misunderstand grinning for granny, warring for want wreck. It doesn't matter. After all, if looking at a painting or listening to music that doesn't have words, I misunderstand, it's considered a function of excess of interpretability. Works having vectors, operational vibrations outside their physical presentation in common understanding, not only Black people's theoretical proposals. By virtue of being in proximity to my peculiarity, the speech of another, what comes out of the body of another now, more likely a long time ago than almost dying there, until it is activated when I come to it. That is, the things that actually die that we make, perhaps going wrong, not understanding war, including the sound of a person's spasmodic coughing, as a vestibulary element. Once the fundamentals of the so-called beat are established, and the other effects, some horns, some amplified weed pulling, all of which can be heard on any device. I think it's interesting that the auditory register of the coughing is lumped into a bar with the 808 drop. Impossible to hear. Seconds later, the sound signaling pulmonary illness or distress, ancillary to vocal strain. No one arrives with the intention to suffocate. P look darker. I hear as penis darker. The gathering or clearing in which verbalization will begin to take place is already jammed up. Warring being on the mind of this man, whose lungs can't fill up, with either smoke or air. He says nothing, grunts or counts, saying nothing technically, imagining as gnarled or entwined figure in which all the intentions of love are activated, all its disappointments, hovering as a fundamental magnetism in the gaps where two bodies do not touch, where perhaps the hips of two persons attached at the genitals form the angle at which two human bodies move away from one another. This is also a space of containment. So a formation in the physical world of particulate refusal. Its essence isn't contamination, having a problem associated with its physical properties toward destroying the connection. Its hold is touching too much rather than too little. Little language being necessary, any first-person declaration involving will not, the sculptural gap between the bodies in terms of the recurrence of the figure, a total imaginary, sometimes filled with nothing but disdain for the other will. I guess it is domination. The point's ultimate non-linguistic origin, or location in the explosion inside an empty space of the wills that takes place at an anti-material level before any kind of sex between the figures could be considered. Sex really being a consequence of the wild, inexplicable space, the gap having an aesthetic quality that is my own understanding to make of living in the future or in other nightmares unrelated to any kind of writing. Anyone living in disproportionate awareness of the chaos that is the gathering of intentional speech within the possibly violent dance of being gathered as minimally two, they spitting and accusing one another in the gap that both holds them and defines an impossible difference. It's unclear how this could be heard as nothing. What the man is saying is a declaration of total war, and so exactly. The man being an innovator and also a threat, and aggressively misunderstood as a matter of general agreement to be not saying anything, whether or not the man believes himself to be writing and is consumed as a messenger. Imagining I get into trouble personally. Sometimes it is possible to avoid the viciousness of white people, often because of money. Only in the middle of my life, apprehending myself, my gender, as a different kind of target. When Terrence says, a nigga can survive, he isn't talking about me. Taking getting into trouble as an idiom. I would be into a posture of warring at this time that can be ignited by disrespect. The twitchy readiness into which I have grown, standing in the kitchen, listening to war. I want to affirm, I hear this man saying words. His life is so strong and reaching me. Let me survive without stealing. I have become misaligned or crooked with respect to the field of dependency, basically a free radical. If I keep looking at the word independent, I can see it surrounded by practices of sex work. It is always pussy that gives me value, and this fact of undeniable facticity must also enter my estimation of the state of my own excess. The forms my life takes have berserk intensity, dissolute facticity. Whatever means I use to accomplish liberation will lead inevitably to the destruction of someone's marriage. That's true. You rail against men, my lover writes to me, We use an encrypted form of digital messaging as if anyone cares what we say to one another. Certainly, I do not believe that anyone does, but these are his wishes. Men, as they exist in their bodies, are not the subject of my interest, so I do not rail against them. That is a misrepresentation of the whole of my aesthetic and phenomenological project, which involves taking up the vision I have been given of my own freedom. I have been given a vision of it, life beyond use. The white women who own the fancy nail salon I go to fired the manager I loved. A Black woman photographer who treated me with professional respect for my time, my lack of it. She knew my work and the work of my sister. She let me use my paid-for seat as a place to weep behind the screen of her conversation, using herself as a blessed covering for me. I realized those bitches don't want me in here. I understood I had witnessed an act of aggression against our presence, our desire to be adorned, to have comforts, to cultivate the rot of this corruptible, all its deathy glory. The nigger woman is the mistress of the world. Optimal dependency being a flowering of sexual and other forms of competition. Indeed, the field articulated as has been is a mode of transit to and fro in a determinate plane, a machine parallelism, slide even, a thought that allows for the permanent possibility of trajectory when what arrests, contracts, seizes time in time, swallows, causes the secure ego to become anxious, the round back of pouncing animalia, my swooping compatriots, and all prey. Movement unsafe and disorganized in this beautiful quantum wilderness. These are the materials. I think this is the last one, but it's this longish. No man has ever not tried to steal from me. That's wrong. The man who never tried to steal from me never wanted to be with me like that. While the man I was with who explicitly stole from me was so crazy at the time I didn't think much of it, structurally, or I could not think structurally at the time. In California, prairie light and scenes from Midwinter Day were coming to me in a confusing way via social media. I wrote to Laura, I had a dream in which I was overcome or beset by a kind of erotic storm, encircled by lovers. That is, men of whom I would say fucking is eternally in the nature of our bond. The transmutational properties of masculinity, the three, forcefully whipping around me, having become a cosmos of presence to myself, my mises with no share of the bearing down. Inside their fucking gyre, I transmitted a signal for help, but it could not escape because the force of the dimensions which they were or were creating was a black hole. The real blackness of the whole was true. I woke up knowing what words to say. Say the dream, Laura. Within 2 or 3 days, I had been trying to identify the name of the pressures. No, I cannot remember what any of them had done to me. I try to remember forming an intention. Now I am going to act as crazy as possible and threaten to go to his job and tell his mama and his best friend what kind of person he is and how he's been stealing from me all these years, and telling people I am a spoiled bitch because I have all these degrees and won't take my baby out of private preschool. So I was acting crazy and smoking out the window of my house, screaming into the garden at the mourning doves, looking at me like I was crazy. I stopped when he said a number. I guess I can't remember much about it because I got pretty drunk afterward and woke up in the night thinking, Lord, I am not able to do this much longer. Please let this man see my humanity. In 2 or 3 days, I had learned there was no name for the pressures. It was the most ordinary Black womanhood, which is not nameless, has all the names of us, and is nameless, and has no intention, and is strategic. One of the days, a young dancer came up to me and said, "I don't know how to embody the musical problems." And I said, "Well, how does it make you feel?" I began to speak of it myself when I felt myself growing more graphically male through its practice. I listen at deafening loudness in my car. Clearly, I am trying to hurt myself. The words, they say, they have a newness. I promise never to speak the words in my poems, not in defiance of interpretation, but because they are so creepily hostile and unfunny, the interior they assume and address so murderous, I don't see the point of repeating them. This is what words do. How does it make you feel? You are not allowed to have feelings. You are not allowed to have anything. And when you have something, somebody will try to take it from you. Don't doubt it for a second. There is no honor in patriarchy. It is a drug. Sometimes I allow my eyes to roll back in its vicious pleasure. I can feel joy if I remember I am feeling the power of myself as a vacuous thing, an unknown thing, out of which words come, under pressure, begin to make new, so that the structure of the poem was falling down around me, as were the constitutive energies of what I was, such as they were visible or detectable to me. I sensed them breaking. They were already broken. This was the condition of which the poem must consist, the radiant materiality of circuitous attacks, some such as might be deflected, others helplessly slip inside what is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nam. That was wonderful. One of the things I just wanted to address in the few minutes that we have is when I was invited to put together a panel about anything I wanted to, I was thinking about the voices, and your poetries, the three of you represent, a kind of necessary food that is completely indigestible to capitalism. And then that made me think about the future. So what voices will remain in the future, which may not be that distant as I once assumed it would be, when capitalism has consumed the whole world. And when I say consume, I mean total consumption from an Afro-pessimist point of view. And so thank you for sharing that with not only myself, thank you for agreeing to participate in this, but also so that people within the sound of our voices get to experience those words. For those audience members who aren't familiar with the interdisciplinary artist, Alicia Wormsley, she famously made, I think the original piece was a billboard in Pittsburgh, but there may have been, this phrase may have been put in other places. It just simply states, there are Black people in the future. And as Leontine Price sort of says, those of us of hue understood that to be quite a rebellious and revelatory, if not and revolutionary statement. And so I would just ask you each in your own way to describe how you felt experiencing that for the first time, or how you react to that statement. And you can, anyone who wants to go first can jump in.
I'll jump in so that we just can have people jumping. I mean, having Black people in the future, the first thing that we should say is that that means that we haven't been eradicated totally, right? And that I was thinking the other day about Thomas Jefferson's wish that Black people would disappear from the United States, in Notes on the State of Virginia, which is such an early American text. And, the forcible integration of Africans and Black people into this space of the United States, and the almost immediate wish that they would disappear being concurrent virtually. And so, there is a way in which, coming to pass intellectually as a Black person and an artist has to consist of that friction, the sort of wonder that you live in the world in which there is no welcome for you, and what you're going to make of that. Because in a way, existence is really mundane. You know what I mean? It consists of like very small and dull things primarily. And so not to have your mind blown totally by the expectation that you shouldn't be here at all, every moment, and just be able to live normally, just regular, right? To like go to the gas station and get a hot dog, in a way, is that's the stuff that art is made of. You hear the children outside. But it's made of this like pocket, very, very small pocket, almost like, you know, molecular in nature, of having in the back of your mind at all times the expectation that possible combustion can occur around you just because you've like hit it the wrong way. You know, that the expectation that you are both here and ordinary and extraordinary and unwelcome could just explode, either in your own psyche or in someone else's, and cause violence. Yeah, that's like a heavy thing. And so that piece is perfect, right? Because of its simplicity in articulating that perspective, I guess.
There's like a lawnmower, so you may hear that. It's interesting because, okay, so Alicia Wormsley is, you know, we're friends, not the closest friends, but we're not enemies by any means. You know, we had brunch with her child rather. And I'm actually like looking out my window and I can see the building where that art project, I don't know, maybe I should give like a little bit of context towards the controversy. So Alicia Wormsley's project is multifaceted. She's a video artist, performance artist, and then she's been using that sentence in different iterations. Sometimes they're like painting on windows, sometimes they're on the billboard. That's what happened with the controversy around it. Sometimes they're on t-shirts. So it moves around, which is an interesting way of thinking about language in material space, like kind of like always moving around. And I'm not quite positive if she originated the sentence or it's found material, but it almost doesn't really matter. And so that project was, the project of that billboard is a CMU tenured professor who is a white man, and I don't know his name, but I'm sure he's nice. And so, and we like him. See, he's not the bad one. He's not the bad one of the story, but I just don't remember his name. And he had a billboard project, which is now defunct prior to this controversy, where he invited people to put billboards up, like artists in the city. So it didn't have to be language. One time there was like dots and stuff. It was, you know, it was very art school. And it's interesting because I was supposed to go a couple of weeks, you would go for like a month or so. And I didn't have time to be writing a sentence. I was like, oh, let me just go to the Board of Thorn, let me find a little sentence and put it up there. But I knew what I wanted to say. I want to read it. It's from one of my long poems, or the only long poem, which is: the sense I get from you, Emmett, and your recanted youth says another song about you is just another song you didn't sing. By Emmett Till, blah, blah, blah. But it strikes me that probably wouldn't have done anything, right? I mean, if somebody knew what I meant by Emmett, they might have been mad, because what you need to know is that billboard, I'm looking at it right now, I'm looking at the building. It's across the street from this big, huge church that's, you know, I don't know, they love everybody kind of church, white church, but they love everybody. You know, I don't know how to explain it in the ways that are polite, but that's what it is. But the landlady, I believe it's a cis woman. Let's put that out there. A cis white woman who owned that building was offended by that billboard that just simply said there are Black people in the future. Either she herself was walking and was just, and this project has been around for years. There's been all kinds of stuff on that billboard. This, that, the third, this person, fucking this, all kinds of stuff have walked around here. But we're in Pittsburgh, which is the worst place on earth. And so, and I will say that and you can quote me. other white people of that area, which is an increasingly gentrified area in which I participate in my own ways too. But the white people here are just very nice and Midwestern, so they're racist. So they just couldn't handle the idea of this sentence. First of all, we go to white fragility and Robin DiFranco to something. Just the word black was just too much, just black. If we could have said, there's a black line here, it would have been too much. It would have been too much because the whiteness here is just like, they don't even want to look. People still whisper the word white here. That's where we are. So that was too much already. And then the idea that there are black people in the future, I can only imagine that they saw violence in that because there are these people who literally, there was a town hall. So I saw some of the people like, that's an anger. I hate it. I might have to walk my kids around here and have to see this sign. Okay, well, what's the sign say? The sign, to them, in the words that I was getting from that town hall, it was a war they saw. If there are black people in the future, that meant there were no white people in the future. That's where we are. Which is like, that's not what this is. That's you need to be responsible for your projections and how you are a failed fiction writer because you are making a scene that is not in that sentence, right? And so it caused all this controversy, and it was asked to take in. The landlady was like, you have to take this down and all this stuff. But I brought up my kind of stanza because I think it deploys a more like sonic, lyric, whatever. But there is something kind of usefully powerful in, I think you just said, the simplicity of it, or like this, the kind of clean syntax. There are black people in the future. There will be black people in the future. Art thou will be, it's just, there are black people in the future, even with no period. So there was something about that was just too much for that little corner. It's a little corner over on top of this little shop called Lorelei, of all things. Now, what's interesting about that corner, I walk past it all the time. And right in that church, they love everybody, and it does. It's a good little church, little like Presbyterian church, deep in they've been there for a long time. They have like, I don't know if it's like what they would call a movement or a resistance, but like literally facing, so it's like Catacorn, who has Southern people, Catacorn. There's a sign there that has like a Rolodex of all the black people who have died. In memoriam, right? But like, it's like George Floyd, I see, like, which is like, just like, if I was going to go in that church, I'd be like, look, that's not what we want to see. Like, I don't need to see that every time I go literally over there to go to Target or whatever. But what's interesting is, so if this is the corner, just don't look at my note, but it's like right here and it's right there. It's literally just facing it. And I just think it's so interesting because that's not causing any controversy. Again, it's the end of the world. People may not have time. I don't know. But it's okay to see dead people on a Rolodex. And it's like Breonna Taylor, it's their faces, and then it's like their name. You on the same corner, but if you up there where it said there are black people in the future, because it was also a spatial thing. It's on the ground where you have to look at it. Where it's up there, you have to look up to see there are black people in the future. It's also, I think that was important. Like, you have to look up and be like, there are black people up in the sky, White people could deal with, this is what it is. This is what it comes to. They could deal with that, right? These dead people in a kind of a Rolodex moving marquee, if you will, because it's lit up, it's like electronic. But they couldn't deal with a sentence that says that there are black people in the future, which is just, that's what it is. What I just did there. That's what it is. It's just like, I can't do nothing with that. Toni Morrison was just like, refuse the white gaze, and I continue to do it because I just can't do nothing with that. They need to do something with themselves. Well, what I can do with, just in my statement here, is that you mentioned, you just was like going to the gas station to get a hot dog. I went to the Sunoco a couple of weeks ago. It was denied service, not by a white person, which has happened. That's not like, I don't get, racist, but by another black man, a black man, a cis black man, who, his statement, I wanted to get some peanuts, and I had just come back from Yumna Harvard, from her little trap house / studio. We had a good time. And, I had a lot of wine. I wanted to go to sleep, so I need to get some peanuts and some Gatorade. I want to take care of myself, literally. He said, oh, no, you that one from last time who told me to look me in the eye. Now, that does also like something I would say. But even if I did or not, I'm saying like, okay, well, just give me my peanuts so I can go. Like, I don't want to stay here. But it was this whole thing where he threatened to call the police on me, was calling the police, and he's shaking as he's doing this. Because I'm like, you don't want to call the police. I'll go into my high Victorian, quick, call the police. Because I'm like, we're going to see what plays out here because there's lots of different privileges in the room, right, at this moment. But ostensibly it was, I was gonna call it what it is. This is a nigga who wanna fuck me and mad that he wants to fuck me. And so at this moment it becomes this strange forensics of like, I can't get $5.27 worth of peanuts from this other Black person who, even though I said call them, eventually I just technically stole the peanuts and walked back to my house. And then I went back the next day and I bought them because I'm a nice.
But that's the kind of racial tension,
that's
that's existing in, yeah. But that's existing in this space that it sends, that where something, a simple notion of existence offends, and a complex notion of identity, or not complex.
Not very complex.
We're not very complex, but frightened. I see how that. Taylor, do you want to jump in here?
Yeah, that really relates to something I was thinking about the other day. I was talking to a friend who told me that the word shame has etymological roots in the word cover or shelter. And I think about what you just said, Rickey, and that like someone seeing you, like the optic of someone taking you in has caused all this reaction, and the optics of this billboard causing white people to do this particular thing. I live in a majority Black neighborhood. On my street, at least on my block, there's always Black people. There's one white woman who lives across from me, and she has the only and the largest Black Lives Matter flag waving in front of her house. Now, there's also a bus stop in front of her house that I used to go to. When we could take the bus, I would go to the uptown, and she would come out the house at the same time that I would be at the bus stop. And I would say hello or good morning, because I speak and I know all my neighbors, you know what I mean? That's just how I'm taught. She would say nothing. There was a day maybe in March or April, I was taking a walk with my partner, and the flag that she had up at that time was a flag that had George Washington's face on it. Now, I think it's a state flag. I'm not sure what the state flag was, but we asked, what is this flag? And she said, oh, it's a state flag of X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's Idaho or why, I don't know, Washington State maybe. And she said, well, I'm not going to wave an American flag, not now. And then, weeks later, her fucking American Schadenfreude made her put up this Black Lives Matter flag. Still not in communication. Also in that meeting of her, she asked, oh, where do you live? And we gestured across from her. You know what I mean? So that's that shit that I feel like if there are Black people in the future, I think that there has to be some kind of, and not to idealize any kind of future space because we're living it right now, but there has to be some kind of divestment in signs and symbols, you know what I mean? It's just not enough for someone to say this thing or someone to have this thing up and to see that like the affirmative statement, there are Black people in the future, causes this kind of physical, legal or fucking whatever the municipal action to take it down, just means that there has to be some kind of divestment from the codependent relationship that white people have, at least in this country and globally, even with Black people, to make them feel something. So there has to be space for Black folks to have some kind of room to make some kind of unhinged sound that is, totally far away from the metaphysical conundrum that you were talking about, Simone. So that's what it means for me. I'm not trying to idealize the space, but I hope that if my Black life can exist in the future, it means that I have space, which means space to be without someone's sign and symbol telling me what it is I do or don't do, who I am or am not. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Taylor. We could spend a great deal of time talking about this these subjects, and I just want to, again, thank you all for participating in this and share not only my gratitude, but also my awe in the fact that all of the things that you've just discussed in sort of the last, in the response to Wormsley's statement of a small part of her project, how you've demonstrated that, as a Black artist living in the United States, which I will not call nor think is representative of America, the Americas, but how you demonstrate that you have to hold all of that in, yet still come to create the work that you create and put in the world, which I think is quite valuable. You can find out, if you're listening or watching this panel, you can find out more biographical information about each of the panelists on the Glass House Festival website, as well as there will be links to their books I strongly encourage you to get them, to order them, and really spend some time with the ideas that are being worked out and evolve in the poetries of Taylor Johnson, Rickey Laurentis, and Simone White. So thank you all for participating, and for those of you who are watching and listening, thank you all for joining us.